Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is Kushalmehra. My guest today, before I actually welcome him officially, let me say a few nice things about Clyde. As I came to Canada 2.5 years ago, I've been trying to understand Canadian issues and Canadian politics from my perspective. My perspective is, I don't know what my perspective is. I'm half Canadian, half Indian perspective. It's kind of a weird perspective. And recently, a few weeks ago, as I was digging into this entire immigration bit in Canada, uh, I was not vocal about it, but I was just researching it for the last few years. I came across Clyde's channel through the YouTube recommendations, and I really liked his content. And then I reached out to Clyde, and he was nice enough to call me on his channel, and we had a couple of discussions. At that time, after the post podcast was done, Clyde and I were just talking about Canadian economy, and Clyde explained the entire dairy industry to me, just a bit of it. And I was like, wait, what? This happens in Canada? So Clyde, thank you very much for coming, and it's an absolute pleasure to host you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me here. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
So this is your first time on the podcast, because a lot of Indians are going to watch this. Maybe not right now because it's very early in the morning in
Oh, I
India
bet.
right now. It's 7 a.m. in India right now. So it's very funny. One of my viewers has already said, who does a live stream at this time in the morning, Kushal? But they don't realize, like, it's late night in Canada. So it's a good time for
Mm.
Canada. But your first time on the Cārvāka podcast. So maybe you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what work you do, and then we can take it from there.
So I'm a bit of an unusual case in Canada as well. I'm a dual citizen, so I don't go back and forth like you do. I'm not a snowbird at the moment. I'd love to be able to go just anytime I'd like. But yeah, no, I live in Canada, dual citizenship with the United States of America, which has always put me at kind of a strange circumstance growing up, because there's this weird phenomena in Canada where I think it started with Justin Trudeau's daddy, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, where they made part of the Canadian identity is you're not American. It's like this love-hate relationship. You love to hate America, or not hate so much, but like your big brother that you just don't want to be too much like, and you don't want people comparing you to, except you grew up with a guy and you probably have all the same mannerisms and cultures and all of this stuff. So yeah, I tend to embrace my American side, unlike some other Canadians. But yeah, this is so I got started on YouTube talking about the Freedom Convoy, and that was really how things really popped off. I was doing other kinds of content. I was helping with back end stuff for other YouTube channels as well. And the Freedom Convoy happened, and here I was with a bunch of equipment, recording equipment and whatnot. And I'm an automotive mechanic, and I grew up in that industry. My brother's a truck driver. This is my life. And I was watching all these brave people stand up against this federal government that was so tyrannical during the COVID years. I mean, it's been tyrannical for a bunch of years, but most Canadians kind of just let it go. And finally, some people stood up and said, no, enough is enough. And I was so proud of that moment that I said, I can't not say anything. I'll hate myself forever if I don't just say something. I'll turn a camera on. And I didn't think anyone was going to watch. Turns out a lot of people are interested in it. So I've been talking about these things ever since. I've got a mouth and I've got opinions, and yeah, I'm not shy to share them.
So I want to ask you this. We'll get to socialism, because I think socialism is also part of the authoritarian mindset, at least where I come from. And my experience from 2001 onwards in Canada is, and because I've kind of traveled in both countries and stayed in both countries, the United States of America and Canada, is that basically Canada is what California is in a way, without the free speech,
And
without the first.
without the good weather.
Yeah, and the large economy and the money.
Yeah, a lot of the good things are not there. Yeah, that's right.
Uh, but why do you think Canadians are so comfortable with this? I'm not saying the level of authoritarianism in Canada is comparable to India before somebody starts to make those insinuations. No, I think India is way more authoritarian legally in terms of the constitutional framework. And maybe one day we'll have a podcast on your channel where, well, I'll scare Canadians enough about how these laws are being attempted in Canada. I did do a brief discussion with a journalist I respect a lot, another one I consider a friend, Jonathan K, and it was like the podcast is available on Collect and on my channel both. We discuss the hate speech motion that has been recommended by the Liberal government, and how it's equivalent to India. But Canadians still, per capita, when compared to Americans, do have a love for authoritarianism. Why is it the case? Where does it come from?
Well, I think it's a sense of security. So, I mean, I don't necessarily share that viewpoint. I guess that's my American side of me, where I'm just like, no. I wanna breathe free, get off my lawn, kind of thing. But no, I think what comes with this is cold weather. When you have a place that's so very cold, you used to months and months and months of just you can't grow crops, you can't do anything. You need some sort of security, and it's easy to sell a social safety net when you have largely, prior to recent times, largely homogenous, state, or a largely homogenous demographic. And it doesn't. I don't mean necessarily homogenous in like an ethnic sense, but a homogeneity of like worldview, a homogeneity of outlook, and people wanting to stick around. All of these things have diminished over the past while, but people tend to, when they see the winter coming, they want some security, and it's easy for people, politicians with socialist ideas, to come in and tease them with these ideas. And it's an innate thing for a lot of people to just have trust when you haven't been really wronged that bad. And Canada, I mean, forever it was seen as the nation with good governance, peaceful, good governance, everybody's friendly. And it's only until recently that we've seen a real heavy-handed authoritarianism come into Canada. So, I mean, yeah, people they're a little bit shy to tell people no, especially when they come in and say, "Well, this is for the greater good." They want to do the right thing, but I think those days are coming to an end.
So now, as far as Canadian businesses are concerned, before I get into the dairy industry, what is the story behind this high tax culture of Canada? Is it the British influence, do you think? Because the United Kingdom does have a free healthcare system. I mean, free. It comes from
Well,
your
I
taxes.
think it's not like the British influence is there, also a Scandinavian influence. Then we've been separated from Europe for a long time, so we look longingly to Europe often. It's not like we have a tremendous shared culture there, but socialism has been something that's been dabbled into for a lot longer in Canada than, say, for example, the United States of America. Very staunchly against it in the United States of America for a majority of the people there. You might have like pockets in academia and liberal cities, that kind of thing, but in Canada, it's been more widely accepted, and I think it's because of you see with the Scandinavian models, or at least a misconception of what the Scandinavian models are. This whole idea of a social safety net that'll take care of everybody, just in case things go wrong, and then it's the slow creep of, oh, just a little more, oh, just a little more, oh, just a little more. It's going to cost you a bit more for that. Oh, we're not going to actually give you those services unless you're denied some other thing. And here we are. We're at the point, and a lot of economists will call this like the Laffer curve, right? We're getting to the point where you're at a precipice of being taxed too much, where you may actually see people not necessarily revolt, but check right out. Like, for example, work under the table instead of working on the books, or work part-time under the table, work part-time on the books, only declare so much of your earnings, or perhaps move your business out of the country entirely, move yourself out of the country entirely. And you're seeing a lot of this lately.
Why do you think average Canadian trusts the government so much more compared to the American? Like, I'll give you an example. The average
I
Indian trusts
can't
the
relate with
government
it,
more
so I
to.
mean it's hard, but it's
No,
hard for
you
me.
know what I'm talking about, right? The
No, I
Canadians,
do.
yeah, because I see a lot of similarities between Canadians on average and Indians in India. Indians also trust the government, very high level of faith in the government.
Yeah, I don't agree with them, and this is why I have such a hard time with it. I've never trusted the government. I've always been on the side of, um, the government's only there to grow bigger and get in your way and stick their hands in your pocket. But yeah, I think there has always been a high level of trusting Canada. Canadians have always known, that politicians are they're kind of scummy. They're the type of people that will skim off the top, but largely they're not there to really screw everybody over. But yeah, we don't live in those days anymore. That we're not this sparse rural nation with just endless resources and and not even enough people to utilize that anymore.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the Canadian dairy industry. So, what? So, how do we start? Do we explain the structure of the dairy industry and then maybe get into the nitty gritties? How do you want to do this?
Well, I think you've already gotten into it. So the idea behind it, and this is supply management, is the idea that, well, if the government doesn't get involved, then left to its own devices, the market could bankrupt farmers, and farmers could have hard times, and they might fall on hard times. So what we're going to do is we're going to structure it in a way that they'll only supply so much here and there, and they'll have quotas for when they can supply, and it becomes this, for lack of a better word, a socialist structure of allocating resources without real price mechanisms, and essentially it requires a governmental body to do two things: determine how much milk is produced, and then also thwart any other businesses from coming in and competing with that market.
So let me understand this. The Canadian government decides on a yearly basis l- the literal quantity of milk that is going to be produced in Canada. The government decides.
So it's a governmental body that works with a lobby, and the lobby, incidentally, is this is a really weird one, because it took me a long time to get to the bottom of this, and I've been interviewing people, talking with different people, trying to search out the information. Why is this such a strong lobby? I mean, at the end of the day, this lobby is deciding politicians. Like, they can decide the Prime Minister of Canada. Essentially, they have decided leaders of political parties. They big upsets in the Conservative parties years ago. Not even that many years ago, when Andrew Scheer ran as the leader of the opposition. So it's it's a cartel. It's set up like a cartel, and it's in cahoots with government that they operate.
So, like, how do they operate? Like, so I guess every year there is this agency that you've spoken about. They sit
Hmm.
down, they do a market assessment. We have X number of people living in Canada. This is the year on year consumption of dairy or dairy products in Canada. So to keep uh, this demand, we have to manufacture this much product, and this is so weird. But why
It's
is
well, yeah, I know where you're going with this. It sounds arbitrary, right? It sounds like, how do they decide these things? And really, at the end of the day, it is arbitrary, and they decide it based on previous years, maybe the past quarter, for example. But a lot of times they mess up. They make mistakes, or they'll end up changing quotas, and some farmers will have to sell back and forth. Now, the stated goal for this lobby is to protect the farmers. And at the end of the day, it's not really protected the farmers, because the small dairy farmers who would want to get into the industry, for example, it's become too expensive to even apply. You can't get into the industry unless you were already born into it. And so it's almost like a type of nepotism, where if you know people, you can get into this industry, and then once you're in it, you'll be protected. And the insidious thing is, it really is just all on the backs of the consumer. So Canadians that have ever traveled anywhere else, they'll know that, milk just doesn't quite taste the same everywhere else. I mean, well, in Canada, it doesn't quite taste the same as other places. Milk's so much nicer, it tastes better. The cheese products are cheaper and much nicer. And yeah, there's a whole shortage when it comes to the consumer side of things. But this is why it's such an insidious thing. The dairy lobby makes sure that the people who are in that group, they'll always be paid. So even if there's a shortage, they'll just fix the price so the dairy industry is fine. But what ends up happening often is they produce too much, and then they actually dump milk.
Oh, so this is just like the scam in India.
Is this a thing that's happening in India?
Not in the dairy industry, but this sounds a lot like the minimum support price scam that runs in India in many crops, like in Punjab, for example. There you go, Kushal. There people will go, there you go, Kushal bashes Punjab again. It's not my fault. The scam is being run in Punjab in India, where basically they have this fixed crop price. We call it the minimum support price, and the minimum support price is kind of decided by in collusion with the farmers lobby, and they keep on increasing the minimum support price, and all governments do it. And then the minimum support price is such that farmers are incentivized to only manufacture crops that are under the MSP, and the scam keeps running. It's a Ponzi scheme.
So I
This
have a
sounds a
link
lot
here.
like the Indian scam.
I have a link here, and this clip went viral last year, and this was one farmer who actually came out and went public about this. This guy, his name was Jerry, and he explains it. He explains it in the clip. You can pop it up, but he's upset because he's dumping so much milk.
So do you want me to play it from the start or from this very spot? That
you can. It's not very long.
Okay, I'll just play it.
Quite a bit more milk because the feed is very consistent, and as you do a good job, you will produce quite a bit of milk. So, but right now we're over our quota. It's regulated by the government and by the DFO. But the problem is what they don't understand is millions of people look at this milk running away because it's the end of the month. So I have to dump. I dump 30,000 liters of milk, and it breaks my heart. I will show you. By the way, this here, Canadian milk, it's $7 a liter. When I go for my haircut, people say, wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk. I say, well, you have to go higher up because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm because they make us dump it. And no matter how we stand up, so this time I'm going public. I want the people to see the pain that us growers have of 365 days. As a little boy, we grew up on a dairy farm, came from Europe, work, and here we are. This is what's happening. Oh, by the way, only one country in the world, here in Canada, there's not the United States, not Europe, where they dump thousands of liters when they're over. But we're not supposed to talk about this. Because, I don't know, it's just one of those things. But as it's happening...
Yeah, you can stop it there. So he's gone public with this. Now he's since gone pretty radio silent. I heard claims that he's been threatened.
Oh my God.
No, like I'm talking like the dairy lobby behaves like a mafia. And that's what's crazy about it. And it's this openly kept secret in Canada that, again, they have all this power and all this influence, and yet most people are like, what? Really? The dairy industry? You can't be serious.
But why throw the milk? Why not sell it to other countries or other places, or convert this milk into other products and sell it across the world? This makes no sense.
So it does make no sense. And of course, it would make a lot of sense if we were to, make a market and put it out there so that, we could have a outward selling dairy industry. But as soon as we have an outward selling dairy industry, we'd have to drop all the tariffs on the inward coming dairy industry, right? And this is where they don't want to do that. So it's a Canadian little tiny microcosm bubble. This goes outside of like global trade or any of that stuff. They don't want global trade. They want to maintain this little bubble monopoly or oligopoly, whatever you want to call it, over the dairy industry locally, even to Canada. And it goes even so far as they won't even allow them to, make powdered milk or baby formula, things like that. We even had a baby formula shortage a couple of years ago, and it was because of, Nestle and a few other baby formula manufacturers from the United States that we buy our baby formula from had some health and safety issues, and it created a global shortage of these products. Meanwhile, we're dumping thousands and thousands, like hundreds of thousands of liters of milk. Yeah.
This makes no sense. If Canadians need baby formula, you don't need to buy it from America. Just use the damn milk. This is so stupid.
It is stupid. It is stupid. just like most other things. And this is why I keep calling it, creamy communism or milky Marxism, right? It comes from the idea, the origins or the idea of central authority, or it sounds a lot like it, does it not? You hear, planned economies, these kinds of things. Yeah, managed supply is the name of the game. They want to manage the supply of it, and by managing the supply of it, the goal is to maintain stable prices of the milk. It's not very different from the same economic policies you saw during the Great Depression of, I believe, Hoover, when they ordered farmers to till their fields over while people were starving. They ordered people slaughter all of their cattle and all of their pigs and bury them while people were starving. And the reason why was because there was deflation in the prices. So they didn't want the farmers to lose money by not selling their product for very much. So the idea behind it was to get rid of the food. I mean, it's so ludicrous, and it doesn't make sense at face value. But what it does is they're trying to create short-term solutions instead of even touching long-term solutions.
This is classic protectionism.
It is. It's mercantilism all over again from way back. Yeah. That's what it is. It's protectionism.
This is ridiculous. And the funny bit is, when the farmers' protest was happening in India, which was aided and abetted by Canadian Khalistanis over here and funded, the funny thing is the Canadian government had the gall to actually chide the Indian government to listen to the farmers when they carry on something far worse in their own backyard in Canada. This is ridiculous. I find it hilarious that Canada has...
It gets even worse, Kushal. Like it's so bad that last January, the British government walked away from trade negotiations with the Canadian government over cheese tariffs that we have. I'm not joking. It sounds so funny, but it's ridiculous. Because we're originally a colony of Britain, and we never really separated. We asked please nicely, you know what I mean? Can we at least make our own paper money and stuff? But we separated from Britain, and then now we can't even negotiate trade with them because we have a cartel going on in our own tiny little economy.
This is fascinating because let me talk to you about there is this cooperative model, which is a company in India called Amul, and they basically have a three-tiered structure of cooperative societies. So how it is small farmers in India who might have a single cow or two cows or three cows or 10 cows or 15 cows, they have created this cooperative model where they have to maintain their cows till a certain quality standards. Amul actually does it very well. They check it and they collect their milk, and Amul has collection centers with uh, facilities which Amul invests in villages in India. Like even a village with a population of 1,000 people, 200, 2,000 people, 5,000 people, they will have infrastructure invested in and around that area. How I came to know about it is actually when I had worked with a member of parliament back home in adopting two villages. We actually tried to set up an Amul center, and then in trying to set up an Amul center for the villages, we found out all the requirements, and then we gave them the space and how Amul got the infrastructure there. And then villages, they have their quality testing parameters. They test the milk. It doesn't matter. You could bring 10 liters of milk too. You can bring it daily. Amul will buy it if you meet the quality parameters, and then they will freeze the milk, collect it, and it gets distributed on a daily basis. Every villager has to have a bank account, and Amul pays those villages. Amul has a fixed price. I remember when I was working, I think the price was like 25 rupees, Indian rupees a liter or something. And
Mhm.
it's such a fascinating system where even the small farmer is so empowered. And in fact, the Amul model in India is kind of discussed globally, and the people running it actually give presentations across the world. And I'm just thinking, like, here the small Canadian farmer is not even allowed to enter the dairy industry because
No.
no, you can't do that.
No, you'd have to have millions of dollars. I mean, just the infrastructure alone, everything that would be required for you, just so you can meet the quotas. Because if you can't meet the quotas, you cannot enter the marketplace. And that's the whole point is making sure that people meet these quotas. And then in the process of trying to meet the quotas, sometimes there's a lot of feed, the weather changes, something like that. And then cows don't stop producing milk if the dairy board says we want you to cut back your production. They just keep producing, and these are the moments when they're forced to dump it down the drains. And you can't just release it onto the market, go behind the dairy cartel. I mean, if you understand how cartels work, it's from a market perspective, the only way a cartel can work is if two or more players in a business in a market share try to fix the market share so that they can all benefit, screw the customer over, raise the prices, whatever have you. But the problem with that is that they'll always at some point try to undercut each other. So in lieu of undercutting each other, or to stop each other from undercutting each other, they go to the government and they say, hey, government, you have a monopoly of violence. Why don't you make sure that we keep our agreement of screwing the customer over and fixing prices? This is how cartels work.
Yeah, but it's unbelievable that for a country like Canada, who prides itself of being having empathy towards the underdog, would actually screw over the underdog in this scenario, which is the small dairy farmer. That's the real underdog.
Well, this is the crazy part about it, because if you talk to people about it, you'll either get a really vehement in support of the dairy industry response, or a very negative response of what the dairy industry is doing. And typically farmers that are in good graces with the dairy lobby, so they get their quotas and they get their paycheck, they never ever want to speak ill about it. And of course they'll speak very nicely about it, because people will actually be threatened over this. Like this is a serious thing. So, don't rock the boat is sort of the way things go, and just keep those checks coming in. So a lot of these farmers that are in the lobby, they're doing quite well, and everybody else just doesn't want to enter the market. So it's a really, really fascinating scenario of if, for example, the dairy lobby were to go away overnight, because of how dependent the farmers are that are in the industry and how expensive it would be to meet regulations, it would destroy the dairy industry entirely. if the market were to open up overnight. Nobody would survive it, and we would just only have American milk and cheese in the country.
So compared to America, how does the American industry work? Do they have protectionism? I know they have protectionism in a lot of their agriculture when it comes to corn and stuff like that. America does subsidize their agriculture and their farmers, but how have you done comparative analysis of the American dairy industry in that sense?
So apparently there are some places that have it, and it's like a state by state or municipality by municipality sort of structure. But there's no national U.S. Dairy farming cartel or anything like that. Not like in Canada. Now in Canada, it's split up between, I think there's the Quebec area and east of Quebec. Ontario is a large part of that, and then Western Canada. They're different sectors of this dairy enterprise, but it's largely that. And then there's other ones that are included in there, and that's the poultry and a few other products. But dairy is the big one with the big quotas.
All right, and is there no resistance against this in the Canadian political discourse? Like nobody dares touch it, like, whether the Conservatives or the Liberals or the NDP.
Without, the pun is the sacred cow, right? And it technically is. It's a sacred cow. Maxime Bernier lost his career as a conservative politician, if you know who he is. So
Yeah.
Maxime Bernier, he was running against Andrew Scheer, who was a relatively unknown politician at the time of the leadership race. This was a number of years back. You may remember Andrew Scheer running against Justin Trudeau and losing miserably because everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" It's not even that palatable. Well, it was Maxime Bernier who was saying he was going to get rid of the dairy cartel. He was going to get rid of the dairy lobby, and so they used all the power that they had to boost up this Andrew Scheer guy, get him in. And there's a famous picture, and I'll send you an article with the photograph. It really is something else to see Andrew Scheer drinking out of a carton of milk right after. Let me pull this out. I got to get the image. I have it right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Okay. I'll get you the image shortly. Oh, here it is. So this was right after the event, as he was accepting the nominee for the conservative leadership. He got up and he cracked open a carton of milk and he drank it in front of the audience.
Okay, that's so weird. I just saw the image.
It's absolutely absurd. It's absurd, but this is the power that the dairy lobby actually has. They'll pick winners and losers.
So weird.
They'll destroy a politician's career if they go against him.
I mean, I've seen weird things in India, but this is weird by Indian standards also.
Welcome to Canada. There's some weird stuff happening here.
Yeah, it's like this is like a mafioso. The funny thing, like mafia is usually like liquor and drugs and
right.
Yeah, right. In Canada, you have a dairy mafia. They kill you by milk. That's
by
so
milk,
weird.
not like drugs or illegal substances or narcotics. It's milk. I know. As I was digging into this, I'm like, what is this? What are we doing in Canada? Because I only started looking into it because I heard about supply management. And to me, that sounded a lot like, central planning. Like I'm very much against this whole is a concerted effort in recent years to move towards more of like a Maoist communist movement. And whether you call it a Mao or neo Mao, I don't know what you would call this, a new modern communist push. Some people are calling it fascism.
Is maybe this communism with cows?
Yeah, it's that creamy communism, right? And I flags went off, right? When I heard this supply management. What Why would we be doing that? That's economically bad business. So why would we want to do that? And the more I look into it, the more it looks more like just blatant corruption than it does like a push towards socialism in that sense. But that's really where it came from. The idea of
We have the
central
perfect comment
planning.
from a live viewer: Communism.
Communism. Yeah. Okay, I like that. So, but this is a thing that's a huge concern because I think we're far enough removed from the era of the Red Curtain. When China was overtaken by communism, the Soviet Union was overtaken by communism, and it was very much a fearful thing for a lot of people in the West. We don't want communism coming in; it's terrible. And then, years go by, the communism sort of subsides, and this socialism runs in through, the Scandinavian countries and some other places in the world, even full-blown communism like we saw in Venezuela. But there's for some people, especially like in academic circles or even in the entertainment industry, there's a certain allure to the mentality of, well, why don't we all just share everything, and why don't we just move towards this? And how about we start making measures to go in these directions? And even saying that the Scandinavians were successful in their own right, which if you go to some of these Scandinavian countries, you'd realize that it's not very much like communism at all. More particular tax base that only taxes themselves, or they're only beneficiaries from that in their groups and neighborhoods, that kind of thing. They don't tax the fuel industry or things like that to get this. Whereas in this new socialism, this new Western Marxism is more. It goes back to the idea of let's get the guy that's got all the money. Like something out of an Ayn Rand novel we're seeing, and it's creeping more and more into Canadian politics and more into the mindset of Canadians. Like, why do I have to do this hard work when somebody else has a whole bunch of unearned profits, and not actually, like, an economic illiteracy that we have across the board in Canada. And it's leading the government to have carte blanche to make some really, really dangerous, I'd say, decisions, because people just don't know any better. And here's one of the more recent ones. Here's Justin Trudeau just the other day making an announcement, because Pierre Poilievre has been saying, I'm going to sell off all this government land so people can build houses on this land. Trudeau has a different idea.
Oh my God, this guy, let's just say your honorable prime minister does not have a lot of fans in India.
Well, that's a good, we should bring more of those people here.
Yeah, so let's listen to him.
Here's something we can all agree on. We need more housing in Canada. But that the government should step up and make sure that housing gets built, that's where some people disagree. Take federal lands, land that's owned by the federal government that isn't being used anymore. The Conservative Party leader wants to sell it all off to make a quick buck. That does nothing for you. The federal government owns tons of land in cities and towns across the country. You can build a lot of homes on those lands, so that's what we're going to do. We're offering up that public land for housing. And we're not just going to sell it all to developers, we're going to long-term lease it. See, by leasing the land, we get to work with communities to make sure that home builders are building the right homes you can afford. We've got land, we got lots of houses to build, so that's exactly what we're going to do.
Oh my God, this guy's crazy.
Yeah, it's the Chinese communist model, right?
This man is mental. He wants to build houses. The government is going to build houses. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How did I miss this?
It was just the other day. It was just day before yesterday. And it's insane. It's insane. The level of totalitarian creep that's happening in Canada. Where
he
they're
wants
just
to build houses. This is so stupid.
Yes. And it's the hubris of people like this to come in and mess everything up, because he's come in, he's messed the economy up like nobody's business. And then what's his answer to that? Instead of saying, oh, maybe I'll step down or just even get out of the way, he's like, I'm gonna come in and fix this for you.
My God, this is so stupid.
You know,
This is just like the immigration scam. First, you let millions of people in, and then like, oops, why did we let so many people in? You did. You decided to do that.
they
This is
did it.
crazy. Lease
But
land.
this, I know it's so hard.
Lease housing land, not industrial land. Housing land.
And what's crazy about this is we actually live on the tiniest amount of livable land in Canada. There is so much land that's available, but most of it is what's called crown land. So it's government-owned property that they just will not open up. They refuse to open up to private ownership.
Oh, so do they think the real estate market will crash, and the real estate lobby doesn't want that? And you know who controls real estate here? I know that. I know many groups who control real estate here. Many big companies
Wow.
invest there.
So there's a big vested interest in making sure that real estate does not crash in Canada, but it's going to. It's just a matter of when. I mean, and a lot of people say, well, no, real estate never goes down. It's never gone down since the Great Depression. Well, it went down in the Great Depression. It sure went down. Now, real estate has never also gone up the way it's gone. It's really ridiculous. Where in your average, like I live in a small town, and townhouses, you can't buy one for under $1 million in a small town. People are priced completely out of the market. And then other people are, people who bought into the market way long ago. They're either, equity rich and they're doing fine at the moment, and the government's encouraging them to take out lines of credit to spend all that equity, or they're in the crunch and they're paying huge interest rates at the time now. Now you shouldn't think that 4.5% is a huge interest rate. But you only will if you're in an economy like it is today, where wages are stagnated. The amount of money people are making is completely stagnated, but the government is spending so much money on this false idea that to avoid recession, you stimulate the economy. And this is Trudeau's thought since day one, when he said, when he was asked in the campaign trail before in 2014, what are you going to do to grow the economy? He said, well, we'll stimulate the economy. Or how are you going to balance the budget? He says, we'll stimulate the economy will grow, and then the budget will balance itself. He just thinks that it's this, John Maynard Keynes theory that just inject liquidity into the market and everything will balance out.
Trickle down, basically, right? Trickle down economics.
Well, yeah, it's this idea that deficit spending will get you out of a hole, otherwise known as the broken window fallacy. The idea that you break a window and it'll create economic activity all over the place, because people are going to be doing all kinds of work to get that window repaired. At the end of the day, you still out a window. Instead of what? Instead of doing what? We should be doing other things. We should be doing productive things.
Yeah, it's not productive. It's not productive. This is like, I could create employment if I banned shovels and I gave people spoons. So I need more people to dig. So, ban shovels. That's exactly.
But then you'll end up with lots and lots of spoons in no time. And what do you do with all those spoons? Now you got to hire somebody to dispose of them all.
But why is it the job of the government to build houses? Sell that land off. I actually agree with the Conservative Party leader here. Just sell that land off. Have a transparent auction where different real estate developers bid for a price based on the market available, and they build according to the construction norms are already there, and all this money that the government makes from selling government land could be used in productive activities, which would help the average Canadian. And I think the housing would be built much more faster and overall real estate. How can the real estate? So the underlying
So we're
assumption.
already at our maximum capacity for building in Canada, and based on our yearly averages, we can produce about 230,000 homes in a year. That's what our construction base can do. And that doesn't, and probably to your Indian audience, it sounds like that's astronomically low. We're a small country of 40
Yeah,
million
yeah.
people. We only hit 40 million recently. And actually that those numbers are actually dwindling because there's less people going into the construction trades, these kinds of workforce. People are getting into other things, maybe not wisely, but they're going into other things instead of that. So we have a retiring workforce coming in. So our ability to supply this demand is dwindling every year. It's astronomically ridiculous.
Well, everybody's busy getting those diplomas in Brampton.
Yeah, above a massage parlor in
Yes.
Brampton, Ontario. No, I
That's
know
like,
it's crazy. It's crazy, and the immigration thing is actually a symptom of a larger socialist issue. This idea of social insurance, that when you retire, the government will be the ones to take care of your pension. They'll hold on to it and they'll pay you out. Now that's a Ponzi scheme, like
yeah.
any other Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid, and the way it works is you know first depositors come in, you pay those first depositors with the next depositors, but you're going to need more of the next depositors in order to pay it off and skim off the top. So every generation you need a bigger group of individuals paying the taxes in order to support the people that are surviving and living off these pensions. And not to mention, as survivability increases, your average age has gone up since the days that social insurance first came around, and pensions. So now we need more and more growth, and this is a misnomer, and this is what it's a band-aid. This whole idea of unfettered and open immigration, it's a band-aid on a bigger problem, and that's no politician will stand up in front of the Canadian people and say, we cannot deliver on the promises that we've made.
Now, what I find very interesting is I don't remember the exact number, but I was looking, because it's been years now, but I was looking at the Scandinavian social security model, where how they manage it is they have very low corporate tax rates. So what they do is they have very high income tax rates, personal tax rates, but very low corporate tax rates. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is people keep their money invested in the business, and if and when individuals make higher amounts of money, they have a progressive taxation system, and the highest slab gets the highest income tax. And the idea for the social security network to work was that at least 80 to 85% of the society has to be paying income tax regularly for that model to work, where Scandinavian countries now have started to struggle off late as their birth rates had started to fall. So a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
essentially the boomers in Scandinavia, they are leaving the workforce. So the pool of people paying taxes in terms of income tax to maintain the social security network is slightly reducing. They tried to cover it up by getting immigrants in, and they just got the wrong immigrants. I don't know how to say it other than saying they got the wrong immigrants, and now they have a social cohesion problem. And now to deal with the social cohesion problem, they stopped immigration. In a lot of these governments changed in Sweden, in Denmark, in many other places, and now, okay, they may temporarily halt the social cohesion problem, but it still doesn't solve the problem that they have created this monster of social security, which needs to be fed when certain people are paying income taxes. I don't believe it's going to be very different in Canada, where
No.
Canada, from all for all the research that I've done, has a dwindling number of baby boomers who are going to be there in the Canadian job market. Now, all these baby boomers are going to start exiting the job market from the year 2028. A lot of these baby boomers were actually skilled people like you, Clyde. People
Mm-hmm.
who have a certain skill, who are tradesmen, who are auto mechanics or construction workers, and many of the people who actually have maintained the backbone of Canadian society, who have held this society together. If these people go, and you have diploma mills, while you can actually get talented people from. I understand Canadians don't have children, and that trend is not going to change. I was looking at birth rates of Canadians; it's way below replacement rate. So the only thing that can save Canada or any of these Western nations is actually immigration. But the point is not immigration
Mhm.
being evil, and this is part of the larger socialist paradigm where authoritarians think they need to save people, and authoritarians then make bad decisions, and then they just destroy the society.
Yeah, you're yeah, because they think that they're doing the right thing. The road to hell is paved in good intentions. This is the whole idea. Well, those people who wouldn't be able to take care of themselves if it wasn't for our omnipotence and making this social security scheme. But it's actually a social security scheme that's causing all the trouble. So you've always hear the magic 4% number. You need 4% growth year over year. Well, that is what the 4% number is. If they don't have 4% growth in population and in economy, well, then they won't be able to pay back these depositors that put their money in for the social security, because they're not putting social security in to some fund. It hasn't been there for 60, 80 years collecting more money. They're spending it. It goes right into general revenue. It's ridiculous. And people don't see it for what it is, but it literally is a Ponzi scheme. And the only real way out of it is to come clean with people and say, listen, growth is kind of coming to an end. And you're going to see this too in other countries. So yes, the Western world is sort of slowing down on growth, but this is a phenomena that's happening across the planet.
Yeah.
Anywhere where you find prosperity, you see birth rates go down. And this is just an inherent thing with human beings, that if we're struggling, we're just going to make lots of kids, because lots of kids will help out with the family, be able to help out uncle and help out granny and till the farms or whatever people have to do to survive. But once you start doing well economically, people start thinking, well, I don't know if I can afford to have so many kids. I'm going to slow down. And this happens. And you're going to see this even in countries like India. Projected way out, you probably 2050, you're going to start seeing a negative growth in the population of the country.
Yeah.
I would say that makes sense. Look at China right now. They actually exacerbated that with the one-child policy back in the 70s and 80s.
Let me show you something. Let me show you. You're gonna just to back you up completely. Let me show you this figure. This is the Chinese kindergartens close as birth rates drop.
Oh wow!
Look at both public and private. Both are dropping. I just wanted to back you up with
They're
actual
just closing.
evidence. You're just 100% right. You have hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and this is going to be a global phenomena. I mean, the Western world can't always get immigrants from other countries. It's not always going to work, because other countries are going to start, losing population, and their local governments are going to go, whoa, we need to keep people. And then what are they going to do? They start putting walls up where people can't escape. Yeah. I mean, is it going to be Berlin walls all over the place? Like,
it's already a discussion in India.
And that's crazy, because people forget what the Berlin Wall was for. It was in communist Germany. It wasn't there to keep people out of communist Germany. People weren't going there because it was a great communist utopia. They had to trap the people in. Now, this is why people are concerned about things like digital IDs and central bank digital currencies, because that is the new Berlin Wall. That is the thing that will keep you from jumping the border, because people won't want to leave with nothing in hand.
Yep. And most people don't realize this when I tell them the story about India. Is right now India just our birth rates are just above the replacement rate right now in India, and they are reducing at a very fast rate. It's just that, right? People think, oh, India has 1.4 plus billion people. And there are so many, they must be, Indian birth rates are falling very fast. Even Indian Muslim birth rates are falling the fastest now, because they had the highest, and now their birth rate is falling the fastest. So India is going to flatline in another 10-15 years. Then we'll have a plateau decade where basically our population will pretty much remain there and thereabouts. And then from 2050 onwards, our population is going to go into a steady decline in India. Now, the average age of India right now, if I remember correctly, is 27 or 28 years. Let me check it. I don't want to misquote. Yeah, 28.4 is the average age right now. In the next 2 decades, this age is going to rise. India is going to be like 33, 34. China already is 37, 38. What are we going to do with all these old people? The entire planet is going to rely on Africa, because Africa is the only place right now on planet Earth that has the highest birth rates. So, people are angry at international students from India right now. In 2 decades, they're going to be angry at international students from Africa, right?
Well, hopefully we're not running schemes like this.
Yeah.
Now, in Canada, it's crazy. There was a UN report that came out and said that there is slavery in Canada.
Yeah.
Because of the scams that are going on with Indian workers, particularly from the area of Punjab, that are being scammed by locals in Punjab to come to Canada, go to these mills, diploma mills, and they get no experience. They don't learn any, no good cultural enrichment. There's no language exchange. They're in there with a bunch of other people from the same area that they're from, duped into it, and then they get stuck where they're in a situation where they can't go back home and they need to get a job. So they get scammed even further into what they call LMIA scams, and these are labor market assessments. Yeah, and these this is the way the government justifies hiring people from outside of the country to fill positions, because the company will say, we can't find anyone, and the requirements have been so low for burden of proof to show that you can't find any Canadians that they don't even try. They just apply for these market assessments, these LMIAs, and they get them. They pay about $1,000, and then what they do is they turn around and they sell them to these Indian students for upwards of $50,000 on loan, so that they can get an entry-level position working at Tim Hortons or some place, and they have to work off this loan. It's indentured servitude. It's ridiculous, and this is happening in Canada.
Yeah. So Toronto Star just did this report. I think it was today. So this is a direct quote from the article. A longtime ESDC employee. This was only out because this employee decided to speak up. Obviously, he is anonymous, or she is anonymous. On the front line of labor market impact assessment processing, told the Star that as the TFW program ballooned and businesses were allowed to hire more and more workers, checks that curbed fraud in the program have been eroded, prioritizing speed over scrutiny. Obviously, the person was anonymous, and this is the killer. On the black market, LMIAs used to cost somewhere between 10,000 to 15,000 Canadian dollars, Sierra said. Now these workers are paying 70,000 to 80,000 to consultants and employers for LMIAs, and when they come to Canada, they realize the job doesn't exist. Connolly said migrant workers whose permits are tied to a single employer will often put up with, quote, terrible treatment out of fear of retaliation by their employer, which could cost them their job and therefore their status. What I find insane, and you're actually right, this is all incentivized because of the Canadian government socialist mindset, and socialism breeds all these problems. And the irony is that I saw this video of some random St. Clair College student, a class. A bunch of them were failed because I guess they did not do well in a class, and they're making a video talking about the problems in Punjabi. I'm like, who are you addressing this to? Like, Canada speaks English or French. Why are you making the video in Punjabi? If you need the sympathy of the average Canadian, you should be speaking in English. So there are only two logical conclusions here. A, you can't speak English. So if you can't speak English, why the hell are you in Canada? That is point number one. I don't mind. You can live in India. You can live in different parts of India. Punjabi, you can get away with Punjabi in most parts of India, or Hindi. But why are you in Canada? If you're here, you must have given that IELTS or whatever the equivalent of English proficiency exam. Clearly, that is a scam because you can't speak English. You come over here and then you act like as if immigration is a privilege, or not a privilege but a right. No, it's not. And then you make all sorts of excuses, and because of these a bunch of these bad apples, whether it's a protest in PEI, whether it was the weird protest in Brampton, or now this protest that I came across, you're giving the other students a bad name. Like I met a bunch of students at the University of Windsor. They are doing engineering degrees, they were doing mechanical engineering, computer engineering, and these are the kinds of jobs that are needed. These are the kind of people that are needed in Canada. And those students came up to me and they were telling Kushal, we just get clubbed because of this problem and we have nothing to do with it. We're actually paying, we got good grades and these kids speak English proficiently. They live in Canada. They intend to get educated. If they find a decent opportunity here, they'll get it here or they'll go back. But I mean, all of this is just weird. What I find entirely weird is this entire process. Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that video. Okay, let me play this video. It is so weird. When I saw this video, like I've not seen anything weird in my life. And these kids, they have a good life in India. Why are they protesting over here about living in Canada so much? It's something
Well, I
that is
think if they're going to
beyond.
learn English proficiency, I think temporary should be the first word that they should really be proficient in, because they haven't been using temporary in the right sense of the word. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
the whole idea is that they temporarily, any temporary worker comes in temporarily.
Stand for! Stand for! Don't blame us! Fix your system! Fix your system! Fix your system! Fix your system! Don't blame us! Don't blame us!
So saying don't blame us, fix your
Yeah.
system.
And here's the thing, like, you have to really empathize with these people. They got scammed into coming here in the
Actually,
first
yeah,
place.
I actually agree that, I don't want to blame them. And I do agree that the system needs to be fixed, but still doesn't mean their entitlement is justified. It doesn't mean the
Exactly. It doesn't
government.
mean they get a free pass. If you get
Yeah.
scammed, like if, for example, if an India call center calls up my granny and scams her out of $50,000 of her saving money, I don't get to go to India and say, pay me.
Yeah.
Because it's not
You
India
don't.
that's the problem, and the Indian people didn't do it. It's one individual actor on a phone line in a call center somewhere. So it's not and this is the thing. Fix your system is what Canadians are doing at this moment, and because we're raising so much awareness of this issue, that Trudeau and his cohort are actually starting to do something. And this is no thanks to the Conservatives. I mean, Conservatives are doing a number of things that are good, or saying a number of things that are good. They are so quiet on this issue because everyone's afraid of being called a racist. But this is the thing. It's not about race. It's about, you came here with a promise, not from the Canadian people and not from the Canadian government, but from some lawyer at some, place above a McDonald's that told you that, yeah, no problem, you'll be temporary for this much time, and then we'll get you your permanent residence. That's not what the temporary worker program is for. The temporary worker program was originally for, crops, fields, that there's not enough young people to go, toil in the fields. So you bring in laborers from wherever they're happy to come from. They come in temporarily, they make some money, and they go home with it.
They go back. That's a lot of Caribbean and Mexican workers come in Canada for.
And they're fantastic. I've met so many of them. You go to some of the farms where you can pick blueberries and whatnot, and you'll meet them, and they're really, really nice people, and they're not intent on staying here. They're very happy to go home, especially when the winter months start to roll in. And they're not keen on that. But
a lot of these Indians could do that. They could, maybe they could come for 4 or 5 months if their airfare or air flight can be afforded, and then they can go back to India too. Why don't they consider doing that? Like, I'm not able to understand what's the big deal.
Well, because this has been used as a backdoor for permanent immigration. And that's why I say, you know, the word temporary is the first English word you might want to get a good grasp of the actual like meaning of, because you're using a program not for what it was intended for, and you have other third parties that are lying to you about what they can do. And when they say, you know, give us what we've been promised, you weren't promised from either the Canadian people or their representatives.
Well, I don't know about the government, because I think it was you who shared that video of Mark Miller and many other things. That, listen, the problem is that what they're doing right now is they opened the floodgates. To be fair to a lot of these children, they opened the floodgates. They let these people in, and at that time, the minister Mark Miller was saying completely different things. You remember Motion M44? I don't need to tell you what was Motion M44. The entire Canadian Parliament voted for it, right? Basically, giving a free pathway to all these temporary workers and
temporary students as well, and that was the
yeah,
other backdoor.
So that's the whole point. And so I mean, they did create this scam themselves. Now this is exactly what I wanted to play. This is your clip.
These institutions are smart, and they've gone and they've seen that they can get tuition fees that are 4 or 5 times more than what my kids pay at McGill or Acadia.
Trudeau's immigration minister, Mark Miller, makes an about face on his international student policy. This was him just a few months ago.
Look, international students are a credit to this country, Mr. Speaker. They are the future of this country, and they are an asset that is very lucrative,
Independent journalists broke the story that this was actually a scam billion-dollar industry and a backdoor for immigration.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to, and then they come into the province and drive an Uber.
But that's exactly how it went down.
Yeah, but again, the point is that now they do an about. My biggest fear in this entire thing is that people should not forget that this mess was not created by the students. This mess was created by the policies and many Canadian businessmen. It doesn't matter. See, once again, there's a section of Canadian Twitter that will say, but these are brown people. It doesn't matter. They're Canadian brown people. They're not Indians. They're Canadians. Once you hold a Canadian passport, you are a Canadian. I don't care what color of your skin you are. You don't get to wash your hands off the scam by saying, oh, this is brown people doing brown people scams. Well, when the policy was created by a bunch of politicians very much in cahoots with these industries, and it was fine till shit didn't hit the roof. And now you have the Prime Minister of Canada going, oh, we're reducing the number of low wage temporary foreign workers in Canada. The labor market has changed. Now it is time for our business to invest in Canadian workers and youth. Now the thing is, okay, fine, I'm an immigration hawk. I believe this should have been done way before then this entire mess has happened. But what about those innocent kids who are committing suicide and their bodies go back to India? Does Justin Trudeau do anything for those children? Justin Trudeau has blood on his hands, and every single politician has blood on their hands. Now, these students will eventually go back to India because there's no other way they can deal with this situation. Obviously, we have no other option. They have to go back to India. And honestly, they'll find a job in India, which is kind of interesting. Now, this is Pierre Poilievre talking about it. Sean Fraser opened the floodgates for low-wage foreign workers, specifically in Canadian communities with high unemployment rates, where our youth can't get work. So corporations could treat them like, quote, modern slaves in the true words of the UN. Not to mention, we had no housing for these foreign workers. Then Trudeau makes him housing minister. Good luck finding a home.
Yeah, Sean Fraser was the immigration minister. Now he's the housing minister, which is really ironic in the whole scheme of things. Now, I have this other tweet here. This is from Kirk Lubomov. He's great Twitter handle. Anybody go out and follow him as well. He was born behind the Iron Curtain, and he knows what communism is like. He knows what all this stuff is like. And he put out this tweet here saying Canada is finally making changes to the temporary foreign worker program that will go into September 26th. Some of us have worked really hard to this, and I'm so glad a step has been taken in the right direction. Temporary foreign worker applications will be refused where employment is 6% plus. Max temporary foreign worker hiring of the workforce for any given employer will go down from 20%, which was only a couple of weeks ago that they made it 20%. It could have been 100% before, to 10%. It's going down even to 10%. Workers hired via low wage stream will be able to work for 1 year instead of 2. So they're really cutting back. The changes focused on low wage temporary foreign worker applications and leave out the LMIA scams for everything else. Still need changes here. I want to point out that these changes by the Liberals have been brought with minimum pressure from the Conservative politicians at all levels, municipal, provincial, and federal, who were mostly silent and cowardly on the topic and still are on LMIA scams. So this is across the board. This is a bipartisan issue that people are coming out about this and talking about it, and it's bipartisan. The establishment that just does not want to rock the boat.
I think on the LMIA bit, I have a slightly nuanced view. Because there are 3 kinds of LMIA from what I have understood in my research. There is high wage LMIA, dual intent LMIA, and low wage LMIA. The problem, I think Canada should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the dual intent and the high wage LMIA for Canada is very important for the Canadian economy to grow. I'm just thinking out loud. And I understand that the low wage LMIA is where the problem lies. And as much as I dislike Justin Trudeau and his government, I think this is the correct step being made right now, because once again, people don't understand is in 1 year, all of this will be there and you will see the effects in 1 year. And the reason Justin Trudeau has done it right now is because he knows he's going to elections in October 2025. And they know that for a fact. That's why they're trying to do these things. And my problem is the Conservatives should keep on hammering about this, is because boy, Canada is screwed if Justin Trudeau and NDP come back to power.
Oh, it's over. It's over for the nation, in my opinion.
Oh my God, it would be shocking, and they don't get to take credit for this. Is all I'm trying to say, because it is Justin Trudeau's Liberals and the Jagmeet Singh NDP that has blood on the hands. It is they who have caused all these problems for average Canadians I've seen videos of average Canadians crying in front of a camera stating that their grocery bills are going up, they can't afford a house. I've seen international students crying and committing suicide on some rare occasions, where the rate is almost 10 suicides a month in Canada, and nobody gives a shit about those kids, because they are the ones who are really scammed. Their parents sold their property off, they sold an arm and leg, and this entire scam was aided and abetted by Justin Trudeau's Liberals and the NDP. The Conservatives had nothing to do with this. Prime Minister Harper, who I think is the best Prime Minister in Canadian history, in my opinion, when I look at the policies of Canadian politicians, Prime Minister Harper had a very mature immigration policy where Canadians actually got what they wanted. They needed a worker, they would get that worker. And this man has just opened the floodgates after COVID. He has wrecked the Canadian economy. He's wrecked the housing market. And now he wants to build houses.
Yeah, now he wants to be a house builder without any qualifications, of course. Now, there is one thing that the Conservatives are raising. Pierre Poilievre has talked about a blue seal, trying to put together a blue seal network for Canada across the board. So the trades have what's called a red seal. And, tradesmen from other parts of the world, you can come, show your qualifications, and then challenge our exam. And if you can pass the exam, you can get into the work as a trade worker. And he wants to establish this for medical workers. So if you're a doctor in India, for example, a nurse, X-ray technician, any of these kinds of medical fields, you could, show your schooling and maybe show some transcripts, and then write an exam without having to go through the whole 4 years or however many years it takes all over again, and get right into that and fulfill the positions that we actually do need. Like we need people, medical professionals. We need skilled trades workers. We're not getting any of those. We don't need any more Uber drivers. That's the real problem.
Yeah, and listen, that this thing can be done properly. It's not that it cannot be done properly. And I also want to tell Canadians, like I think there's a lot of panic around the discourse, which I think it's a little uncalled for. I don't think Canadians need to be that worried. In fact, the Canadian economy, it's just sometimes you listen to the racist discourse over here, you just start
Oh yeah.
smiling
Well, there's all
beyond the point.
kinds.
They're like, oh, yeah, somebody told me go back to India. I was like, well, okay, fine, but what are you going to do about your pension funds? Because they don't even know where the Canadian pension funds are investing the most right now. They don't even know that. Like, these are these are the investments in India. Canada is actually investing, I think, as good as 25% now of their pension funds are invested in the Indian market. Why? Because they know the Indian economy is doing damn well. In fact, Clyde, I told you
Mhm.
should invest in the Indian market too.
Yeah,
When
you
we were
gave me
having
your
an
top
off the
50
line
pick. Yeah.
conversation. Yeah. I mean, I was telling you to invest in the Indian market. My entire portfolio is in the Indian market, and people don't understand these things, that we live in a globalized world. Indians are going to come to Canada. Canadians are going to go to India, and this is how we live. Today's world is not some imaginary, isolated island where we can live. Not being touched by each other.
But I feel like Canada kind of is. It's weird. It's in its own little bubble where, people picture India and they think poverty writ large. I mean, it's not India, right? India's
there's a
more than
lot
a
of poverty in
developing.
India. There's a lot of
Sure.
poverty in India, and nobody can deny that. But the point is that there is a lot of growth in India. And if there was no growth in India, why do Canadian pension funds keep investing in India? It's a
Well,
no.
what I'm getting at is that people picture India and they don't think one of
Oh,
our largest trading partners.
ninth.
Yeah, one of our largest trading partners. Now, when India looks at Canada, they're not looking at Canada like, "Whoa, we want to get into the Canadian market." Like, it's not a big market for Indian investors. Now, it would be a lucrative thing if we didn't have such a problem with our regime, because investors don't want to come here because the likelihood they'll build assets and they'll have it confiscated by the government. They'll build infrastructure and they'll have it removed, or you can't make money from it. It's crazy. It really is.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Canadians don't see how much more easy it is to build a business in other countries.
Yeah, so this is just to back you up. This is according to Invest India. Canada is the 18th largest foreign investor in India with an overall investment. This is just investment in the market. But as far as trade is concerned, uh, Canada has a giant trade with India.
Massive.
Why don't massive trade with India? Like, are these people insane? Like, Canada and India cannot afford bad relations with each other. It's a bad business decision for all sides. More so for Canada. Who are these crazy people?
Yeah, we're
Who
worse
don't
off. I mean, if you don't buy our wheat, well, we got to find another buyer for our wheat. Like
pulses, man, pulses. And I don't know if you saw that clip of Pierre last year, where some Indian media house, Indian origin Canadian media house, let me correct myself, I'm sorry, they had asked Pierre, what are we going to do with the Indian situation? He's like, well, I would like to sell natural gas to India. I would like to sell uranium to India. They need nuclear power. They need natural gas. I would like to sell these things to India. So to that I say, please bring Pierre Poilievre. We need trade with
absolutely.
India. We need trade with India. We need Indians making money. We need Canadians making money. I want thousands of Canadian millionaires to prosper, new millionaires to prosper. And we need thousands and thousands of millionaires to prosper in India. I mean, what the hell is happening here? I don't understand. Like, but before I wrap up, like, how do we fix, like, do you think there is a way out of the Canadian socialism bug?
There's two ways out of it. There's experiencing how bad it gets, and then waking from that nightmare, or waking from our slumber as it is right now and wising up. Which approach will Canada take? I'm not sure. Because here's the thing. Canada needs to have sweeping reforms. We need to go the way of Argentina. We need a Javier Milei. And I don't know if Pierre Poilievre is the Javier Milei that we need in Canada. He's definitely, he talks a good game. He knows his economics. He knows trade. He knows finance. That's great. And I welcome that. Absolutely. But is it enough? Because Canada has a socialist tendency, and they don't have an appetite for the pain that it takes to move to the next step. And what needs to happen is we need to cut government programs like immensely. The amount of expenditure that we have in just the bloat of bureaucracy in Canada is not only costing us taxpayers dollars and being embezzled to the nth degree as it's turning out, but it also thwarts real business. Because all of these bureaucracies are put in place to regulate markets, and it's just absolutely abhorrent. You cannot build a house without waiting years for the permission. They call them permits for a reason. It's permission from the government to do with your property what you want, and it goes across the board. Any market that you get into, we are anti-competitive with the regulations that we put on any market. If we want to compete with China, we want to compete with India, we want to compete with the United States of America, there's no way we can treat our own entrepreneurs the way we treat them. We're anti-competitive.
Not only are Canadians anti-competitive, I think Canadians are too mollycoddled. I think the socialist idea of the welfare state beyond a point is nice. Redistribution is nice. I always feel that the underdog needs some government support, which is why I support some sort of welfarism, whether in India or Canada. But beyond it, but you still need an active market, a very healthy market. Now, I heard the news of them putting 100% tariff on the Chinese EV vehicle imports, but then they have these carbon taxes, so Canadian businesses can't do anything basically over here. So you've made your own market non-competitive, and then you have these Chinese vehicles that were kind of coming in and giving people a breather. Now you've stopped that breather, is because now you're going to create even more inflation. I just don't understand Canada.
It's just against the consumer at the end of the day. I mean, every measure along the way is against the consumer, even when it comes down to French and English laws. We have so many American companies just south of our border, all over the place. You know, a small company in Washington wants to sell their product to people in Vancouver, but they're not going to, for the tiny demographic, they're not going to change their entire packaging process to have French and English for X amount of days just to make the demand from the Canadian side. It's just, it doesn't make sense economically why we put all these barriers to our own market. We're putting barriers on our own market. And to get back to what I was saying about Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, what I predict is if he's not hard enough in pushing us into a free market and changing the mentality in Canada, he'll have a short-lived reign as prime minister, and another idiot socialist is going to come in with all of these beautiful ideas about he's going to give everybody free stuff. We'll come in and ruin it even further. And then, what we could be the next Sri Lanka with the involvement with the World Economic Forum and how much they're pushing us to go completely organic with our farming. Yeah, we could be the next Sri Lanka. Who knows? It either goes, we look at less authoritarianism and more freedom in our markets and decision making, or we go the other way and we go completely into authoritarianism and we collapse like Venezuela.
Yeah. The one thing I notice in Canada now is that I think you guys have those things banned, right? The weed killers in Canada for the lawns. You can't use the sprays that they use in America to kill the weed.
Oh, we can't use those? I didn't know.
Yeah, I think many places you can't use them. That's what I've understood over here. So
they banned WD-40.
Just
now when I did a story on this, people told me they didn't ban WD-40. Like, yes, they essentially did. They banned it in an aerosol can, but then and it's because of volatile compounds. organic volatile compounds, essentially, part of the ingredient of it. So what do? For the Canadian market, they have one product that has less of that, so it's just a less effective product.
Oh my goodness. It's just the nanny state.
It is the nanny state. And this is why I've been saying Canada is the canary in the coal mine for the Western world, for at least for North America. If we keep going the direction that we're going, we are going to become the biggest national security threat to the United States of America, not the biggest trading partner.
Do you know how Canada is not even taken seriously in the Five Eyes discussions? Have you noticed that? How many times they get snubbed and they don't even get called in the Five Eyes?
Well, they gotta stop pretending that they are serious as a government. They gotta stop pretending that they should deserve a seat at the table until they start putting their big boy pants on and actually doing stuff that's worthy of coming to the table.
Well, let's hope for the best. I like Canada a lot. I like India a lot.
I.
I don't want to see Canada suffer that much, but yeah, obviously I don't dislike any politician more than I dislike Jagmeet Singh for personal reasons. Being a Punjabi, I just dislike him with a passion because he's just disgusting. But yeah, what Justin Trudeau has done to Canada is appalling. And listen, man, before we wrap up, what's the best way people can get hold of you? Tell everybody.
Oh, yeah, go check me out on my YouTube channel. It's Clyde Do Something. I'm also on Twitter. It's Clyde at Clyde Do Something without the G. Just not enough characters for the Twitter at handle. Those are the two places I'm mostly at. I do shorts on Instagram as well as YouTube. So go if you're frequent on Instagram, go check out at Clyde Do Something there. It's at Clyde Do Something across all the bounds there. So check it out. I do have a clip. I don't know if you saw this about Jagmeet and the potatoes.
No, what the hell? What did he do with the potatoes now? I dislike him so much, so I just want to yell at him for no reason. I really dislike him. Like, there is no one I dislike more than that one Canadian politician. I have so much anger towards him. He just gets to me. I don't know why, but
I gotta send you the link. You're gonna love this, and your audience is gonna love this too.
Oh my god,
he's an idiot. He's a complete idiot.
He's taken over the NDP in such a fraudulent way. Like, seriously.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Jagmeet Singh. No way, he did not do that.
He did.
No. How can he be so stupid?
A sack of potatoes, one bag of potatoes, cost $9. A sack of potatoes, one bag of potatoes.
That's apples. Why is he holding apples and talking about potatoes?
He's not even comparing apples with oranges here.
What is wrong with this person?
He's dumb.
He makes me like Justin Trudeau. That's why I hate him even more.
He's a Rolex socialist here in Canada.
Oh my goodness. Apples are not potatoes. If you're doing an act, at least hold the damn thing properly, right?
That's right.
An act. You know what this shows to me? They don't take Canadians seriously. They don't take
anything serious. Yeah.
It's so condescending. It's just anyways, man, before we thanks a lot for coming. I really enjoyed
Absolutely.
this. And this is not going to be the last time we're going to do this. I'm going to try to get more and more people. As everybody knows, I've started on this channel. I've started a new playlist that we're calling Canada, and we're going to talk about Canadian issues. Obviously, I'm not going to stop talking about Indian issues because I do live in India too, and I live here. But I feel I have to give attention to both the countries. So you're going to see Clyde a lot of times on the podcast. Obviously, Daniel will always be there. Clyde will be there. I'll try to get more and more Canadians when Daniel and I do these discussions so that all of you actually understand this country and when it comes to weird things, India is not alone. And go follow Clyde on Twitter or on Instagram. Also subscribe to his YouTube channel if you have not till now. He makes great content. And if you like to support what I'm doing, on the Cārvāka podcast. Remember, I don't do any ad reads. I have a rule, no ad reads. So I only survive on you, the members of the Cārvāka podcast. So if you can, do consider joining the membership program either on YouTube or on Patreon. If you're in India, you can also send your donations through UPI to kushalmehra at ICICI. You can buy the Cārvāka podcast merch on kushalmehra.com. If you can't do anything, just like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're an audio listener, leave a rating on the audio platform, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you are. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste. Take care. Bye-bye.